and welcome to this session on accelerating the drug device development process. We're going to do this session in two parts. The first one I'll start off with a short presentation, and then I'll be joined by Ali Jahangir from Janssen Pharmaceutical, and we'll have a question and answer discussion right after. So with that, let's get started on accelerating the drug device development with the focus on novel therapies. I think these are really exciting times for our industry, and there are a lot of novel therapies in the pipeline. The novel therapies are breakthrough, some really carving out path where there was none before, and they do pose some challenges. There are a lot of unknowns, there are uncertainties, and most important of all, there is no prior art or work that could be leveraged in many cases. Despite the challenges, I think there's promise and hope of being able to bring some of these novel therapies to the patients. And it's important for us to discuss how the cycle for development can be accelerated and such that we can bring these therapies to the patients in a safe and viable manner. One of the only ways that I can think of is of actually being able to minimize these gaps and not doing this in a fragmented approach, but a more integrated strategy is being able to handle development, manufacturing, and testing concurrently in test cycles that you could develop simultaneously. As we look at the drug movement from discovery to commercial phases, there are a lot of times where we're going to have iterations, whether they are iterations on the drug side or they're iterations on the device side. There are going to be learnings and changes input through these iteration cycles. And if there is this way of being able to integrate development, manufacturing, and testing, this opens up now a huge path to be able to reduce the timeline, reduce the development timeline, and also helps in getting some potential cost savings along the way by avoiding some of the pitfalls and avoiding some of the delays through the program. Now that we've understood some of the process from early characterization to commercialization and the importance of an integrated approach, we can look at some of the opportunities to critical path. For today's talk, I want to focus on 5 major areas, starting off with the concept of concurrent engineering. In my previous slide, we talked about how we get through these cycles of development, manufacturing, and testing cycles in a concurrent way, and taking that one step deeper to making sure that we are also doing concurrent engineering of drug device and patient input is a conversation that is important to have for opportunities for critical path. The second point that I would like to talk about is process development and process mapping. Oftentimes, the process development side is saved for some of the latter part of the development. And what can happen is there are some key touch points from process development that can affect the device design. And so it's important to tie that in as well with concurrent engineering to be able to speed the cycle. Adaptive manufacturing is one of the key elements that can really help in accelerating the development cycle. And especially when you're talking about small batches, flexibility in setups, and being able to get some of the slots to be able to do these iterative cycles that we were talking about, these are very important. Because when you're talking about novel therapies, whether we look at long-acting injectables or some of the biologic therapeutics we talked about, there are going to be iterations on dose adjustments, optimizing the PKs, optimizing the bioavailability. So there are going to be these iterations, and we do need these slots, flexibility of slots, where as we see these improvements, we're able to put in and quickly get it through our cycle of develop, manufacture, and test. Control strategy is the next item that is key, and we'll be talking a little bit about that and how that fits in with minimizing risks and making sure that we have the patient input on that as well. Now, when we start to think about a combination product development, though, we need to take into account all of those in relationship to the technical needs of the drug and the device, in addition with that to the patient needs. On the patient needs side, there are a couple of factors that need to be considered. First of all, what is the application? Whether you're designing for a chronic application versus crisis. Some of the factors that come into play are population considerations, some of the cognitive, emotional needs of the patients, and then sort of driving that towards then figuring out the path for the device design. Is this a standard design? Is it going to be custom? You have inspection methods, you have integrity testing developed all through, and then you are keeping a sterile path all the way through the filling, through the post assembly features, and final packaging. And so it is important to understand how the process flows on all of these steps, and making sure that if there are any special considerations, those are taken up front. Especially as we start to talk about some of these novel therapies, we know that there are going to be some special production requirements, some needs for special vessels, some mixing techniques, some nozzle heads for high viscosity filling, and all those things are at play in not only providing input to the design, but also developing them early on. So all of these understandings have been understood before, and not later on, where it's now affecting the overall timeline of the development.